In the early 1950s, Senator Joseph McCarthy rose to prominence, capturing the attention of the nation with his claims of uncovering communist infiltrators within the US government. Despite his assertions, concrete evidence often proved elusive. In fact, many of McCarthy's allegations rested more on the prejudice he held against Black Americans, Chinese people, Jewish people, and others, rather than verifiable fact. Yet, his influence would continue to reshape public discourse, much like the police service of Northern Ireland's instigation of a climate of fear and suspicion at Queen's University Belfast, touching upon countless lives on the island. As I share this story, I invite viewers to consider how systems and organizations might better recognize and respond to the subtle, pervasive nature of racism beyond the clear and the visible. Is there an alternative path to justice for Belfast? One that emphasizes understanding and constructive support rather than exclusion. I'm Kiana Canada, and this is Mimicking McCarthyism, an examination of an obstruction of justice, uncovering a new iteration of McCarthyism right here in Belfast, and how it silences Black American stories on the island. Welcome back. This historical episode resonates beyond its own era, inviting us to consider how dynamics of power, ostracism, and societal anxiety can manifest in other contexts, even far from Washington, D.C., and places like Belfast. Here, organizations dedicated to human rights, cultural diversity, and anti-racism profess admirable aims. Yet their responses to nuanced and indirect forms of racism can sometimes appear uncertain and underdeveloped. Might this reflect a tendency among those organizations to flaunt skills that have yet to be truly tested? Reflecting on my own lived experience as a Black American encountering real instances of transnational repression in Northern Ireland, I have observed that the duty bearers ignored the racism I met head on because it escaped traditional markers of direct discrimination, racial epithets, and overt hostility. Instead, indirect racism inhabited the atmosphere, caconymic labels, unspoken biases, and institutional practices that ostracized unless one conformed under the Belfast culture of Arabism. For instance, Queen's University Belfast's reasoning for obstructing my academic work had little to do with policy violations, but more to do with their veiled resistance to the truth. Ireland was a perpetrator of transnational repression. Northern Ireland Human Rights Commission claims their, quote, job is to make sure government and other public bodies protect the human rights of everyone in Northern Ireland, end quote. Yet the 2 years the commission had me waiting in their hallway while officials ignored my claims evoked a sense of being sidelined in ways that raised questions about its organizational culture and expertise in holding public bodies accountable. Even acts that might seem minor on the surface, much like ACSONI's deliberate annotations on my food voucher, referencing the physical and the mental without my presenting such, was a departure from its statement that it promotes, quote, cultural diversity and awareness raising, supporting people from an African and Caribbean background so we can play a full and active role in cultural and civil life, end quote. As one can see, Takura Makoni's actions were an indirect attack on the culture of those like myself, who descend from an African background. Amnesty International Northern Ireland states that their, quote, goal is for all refugees and migrants to be treated with dignity and respect and to advocate for an immigration and asylum system that is fair and effective, end quote. Yet, this declaration invites deeper reflection. How can Amnesty International achieve this objective when the organization appears to harbor biases regarding who qualifies as a refugee? This urges us to consider consequences when certain migrants caught in the system seemingly denied the very dignity and respect the organization professes to uphold. One might argue, Kiana, the same criticisms could be leveled at you. But such an argument would overlook important distinctions. I do not occupy a formal leadership role, nor bear the responsibilities of duty that come with heading human rights organizations or anti-racist movements in Belfast. I am not at the helm of any group advocating for cultural diversity and inclusion in Belfast, nor do I control the power to mandate or have the power to issue take action requests and for the media to take them seriously. My influence as a leader is hypopotent. Although I have engaged in these pursuits, the most significant barriers I have encountered emerge from those deeply entrenched within these circles. Their actions, and as much as their inactions, communicated an exclusionary message that I was not part of this community. These instances contributed to an overarching message of otherness, subtly distancing me from communities and support systems that might offer inclusion and foster it. I concede, far-right factions have engaged in the literal act of burning migrants from their home. While organizations like ACSONI, Amnesty International, and the Northern Ireland Human Rights Commission did not literally burn me out of my accommodation, their actions stoked the flames of a figurative arson attack on my rights. When it came to protecting human rights, each of these organizations shifted the goalpost, manufacturing a reason why my case fell outside their mandate. In my honest opinion, each organization knew or should have known their conduct placed me at peril. But they didn't care. They forcibly pushed and pushed. With confidence, I would move up a step on Fathali's staircase, despite my intransigence in digging my heels into the sand on the ground floor. Their actions echo, in some ways, the era of McCarthyism, where the power to define who belonged and who did not rested heavily on subjective judgments that ruined the lives of some. Moreover, the zeal which McCarthy sought to vilify people as communists demonstrates a pernicious obsession with negative labeling that resonates sharply with the toxic authority I confront, an authority that similarly thrives on constructing reductive public narratives about people like me. In episode 21, I will explore these critical questions. Could the authorities have chosen a different path altogether? Specifically, could the resources they are expending on my persecution be redirected toward more constructive cross-border goals? If the goal was to prevent me from becoming an asylum seeker in Ireland, were there alternative approaches available? And if the intent was to impart a lesson, could they have been achieved without resorting to oppression, racism, and hostility? And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. We'll see you next time.